All right, I'll try not to lose it here. But as Mark said, I'm not a paid HR consultant, whoever your HR VP is. You don't need to pay me anything to come in and talk about what it's like to be a customer, or what customer service is about. But let me tell you a little bit about Bryan. Bryan was born January 17th, 1995, and we thought completely healthy. He was diagnosed 13 years ago, so it'll be December of whatever that year is, and he would have turned 16 in January. So, and when he was diagnosed, obviously, I had no idea what Duchenne muscular dystrophy was. You see the Jerry Lewis telethon, you read about those sorts of things, but you really don't understand what it's all about and what it entails. And I remember going, after he was diagnosed, going to the library in Eden Prairie, and going in the stacks. This is kind of before the internet. I remember reading this book about Duchenne, and I lost it. And I said, "Oh my God, my son's going to die. It's the end of our world." And his mom and I, obviously, were devastated by it. But it wasn't the end of the world. Bryan had a wonderful life. He was given a death sentence when he was conceived because it's a genetic disease. It's there at conception. The boys don't produce dystrophin, which is a protein they need to hold their intracellular matrix to the cell wall in their muscles. So slowly they pretty much crawl on time, they walk on time. Typically the boys are diagnosed between the ages of 2 to 4 years old with signs, which is very typical of Bryan. Couldn't really jump, couldn't run, couldn't climb stairs, and so he was diagnosed, and it was okay. I can tell you that he went to both Disneys. He went to Hawaii twice. He went to the Dominican Republic. He went to the Bahamas. He went to California. Went to Washington D.C. And we didn't let things slow us down, even though each phase of these boys' lives is, and I say boys because only boys get it. If I repeated myself. Because the dystrophin gene lies on the X chromosome, so it's an X-linked disease for those clinicians in the space. And I remember meeting other families with it, particularly a group called Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy, which I had the pleasure of being chairman of the board of, founded by a lady who lost 2 boys, both at the age of 15, from muscular dystrophy. And still to this day, she still fights for, I say, our boys. And she was a strength. We did a lot of political lobbying. We worked a lot with Senator Wellstone. It was actually Paul and Sheila Wellstone Center for Muscular Dystrophy Research at the U. We were able to get the first Duchenne, called the Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy Care Act. It was the first disease-specific bill signed by George W. Bush back then. And so we did a lot of work on that. And we tried to live as normal a life as possible. And Bryan went into, had trouble walking and went into a scooter, the scooter things, probably when he was, I guess, about 7 or 8, and started in that. And then Bryan went into a wheelchair when he was 9, and he was in a wheelchair till he died. And I won't tell you about the story about the last steps he took because I can't do it, but Bryan was a great kid. He could be as annoying as any other kid can be out there. He could argue with his brother and fight over stuff, but he was a good kid. And he never asked why. He never did the woe is me. He never even the trips into the hospital. I mean, when he got that PICC line put in, it was no big deal. He sat there and he got that PICC line put in. When he went on the AVAP or the BiPAP, the AVAP, I mean, he fought it for a while, but then he never complained. And as parents, his mom and I decided a long time ago that we wouldn't tell him what he had, but if he asked, we wouldn't deny it. And we didn't talk about his mortality with him, but we always said if he asked, we would address it. And then when Bryan was in the hospital the last time, we were in on the hospital a couple times because of breathing difficulties, and eventually his ejection fraction of his heart just got so bad. We tried all the oral meds, and that's why we went kind of the last step to the milrinone. And it was Bryan's choice to try the milrinone, which is typically given to your peds patients that are awaiting a heart transplant. So that was Brian's choice to do that. And when we were in the hospital, his mom and I said, well, we need to talk with the boys about this. And so Mary was home with my other son, Alan, who's 13. And Brian and I were in the hospital, and I said, Brian, I said, you know you're not getting any better. And he said, yeah, Dad. He says, I know, but I don't want to talk about it. And I said, well, Brian, I said, we do need to talk about it. I said, at some point, we have to talk about this. And he's like, yeah, Dad, I know, but I don't want to talk about it. So I knew he knew. And we were leaving the hospital. We were getting discharged, and I can't remember if it was after I think it was before he got the PICC line put in. And when I'm strapping him into the van, he's in his wheelchair, and he says to me, and I shared this story because this tells you a lot about Bryan, and then I can talk about him. But he says to me, he goes, Dad, he says, we'll just do what Mom always said. And I'm like, I said, okay, Bryan, what's that? He said, we'll just live each day as best we can. And I said, yeah. I said, Bryan, that's a good attitude to have. And I kind of left it at that, and I'm leaving Amplatz. We were at Amplatz, and I'm driving down River Road because I didn't want to go on 94. And then he says to me, just out of the blue again, he says, Dad, he goes, I know why you and Mom cry. And I'm like, oh, crap, where's this going? He said, you cry because I have muscular dystrophy. And I said, yeah. I said, Bryan, that's right. That's why Mom and I cry. And he said, that's why I don't cry. He said, because if I cried, that's all I'd ever do. And, of course, I'm driving off the damn road. And he goes, I don't cry, Dad. He says, you and Mom can cry for me. And that was kind of the last conversation we really had about death and his immortality. When he was suffering, or not suffering near the end, he never really suffered, and he never complained. And he was struggling with breathing, and I'd say, I said, Bryan, it's okay, you can let go. Mom's okay, Dad's okay, Alan's okay, and he'd like, stop saying that, Dad, so it's kind of funny. But the reason I called Mark, I guess this is kind of part of my healing process or my grieving process, is, there's two different types of customer service experiences that you can have. There's positive ones and there's negative ones, and there's companies that get it and companies that don't get it. And let me run through an example of a company that doesn't get it, and I won't give the company's name, but they sell wheelchair accessible vans. And when Bryan had to go in the wheelchair, his mom was devastated, and I was devastated. And we went down to this van company and picked out a van what we wanted, and got home, and his mom decided she didn't like the color that we picked out, so she called back and wanted a different color van. Did the paperwork. Then she, because she's emotionally distraught. Then she comes back and it's like, I really want the power seats. So called the guy back. Sorry, Mr. Salesman, I like the power seats. Well, this went on for about 3 or 4 or 5 different times. And the salesman at this company got upset with Bryan's mom. So they don't get it. If I were the president of that company or the salesperson or whatever, they're not in the business of selling vans. They're in the business of taking care of families that have a need. And that need is that they want a van. No one begrudges that company their ability to make revenue off of selling handicap accessible vans. But because of that experience, I would be very reluctant to refer someone else to that van company. So you see, they think their mindset is they're in the business of selling vans. They're not. They're in the business of taking care of people that have a need. And no one begrudges them the fact that they can make money off of that. And I talked to the president of that company just like I talked to Mark. I apologize. And that president of that company didn't get it. And I called Mark because I offered to do the same thing. And then when I talked to Mark, he and I talked, and I said, Mark, I said, this is the customer experience service that you all need to deliver to your patients. You're not in the business, I don't think, of selling or renting or leasing AVAPs, BiPAPs, oxygen machines, oxygen concentrators, home infusion supplies, TPN, whatever. You're in the business of taking care of families and kids and their needs. No one begrudges you the fact that you make money, and because we all have to work. But as long as you put the patient first, then the money will come. And the contracts with all the different providers out there that want to screw you down on your reimbursement rates on a constant basis, if you explain that to them, that we're here to take care of families and making sure that they're taken care of, that's the important thing. And I guess that's why I called, to share my experience, a positive experience that I had with you all that either did work with Bryan or didn't work with Bryan, but that you as an organization are doing the right things. And keep it up, and hug your kids. So, thanks.